On Monday, August 25th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina made its first landfall off the coast of Florida at a Category 1. The storm made its way into the Gulf, intensifying to a Category 3. It made its second landfall off the southeast coast of Louisiana on August 29th, 2005 at 6:10 a.m. Hours later, the levee started to break, causing mass flooding in New Orleans, causing people to die at the Superdome, medical centers, and their own home while they waited to be rescued. The government's response and its failure to send aid will go down as the worst in United States history. What happened in New Orleans? Was it planned or was it negligence? This is the story of Hurricane Katrina.
This is a once in probably a lifetime event.
Inside the Superdome, a place called a place of last resort.
I'm doing wonderful, you know. It's a long wait, but it's all gravy, you know what I'm saying?
Ask what would New Orleans do if it gets hit by the big one? It still doesn't know.
In New Orleans, Katrina's winds peeled away parts of the Superdome roof. 9,000 people took shelter there overnight. 2 holes were left in the roof and water poured in.
This is the roof leaking from about 300 feet above, and it's not just here, it's in spots all around the dome.
Today, these are new images coming into us, new video of obvious destruction.
To the east, you're going to see downtown come into the Superdome. So we're very, very close to the downtown area, extremely flooded locations as we move on.
The Gulf Coast is getting hit and hit hard. In the meantime, American will pray. Pray for the health and safety of all our citizens.
You know what I'm saying? They got old people on the bridge. Can't get no water or nothing.
Looters packed the streets, filling carts to the brim with stuff, some running with their arms full, as you see there. Someone ripped apart an ATM, of all things, for some quick cash.
But we will start securing these individuals. These individuals will not take control of New Orleans.
Don't abandon your shelters until you're given clearance by the local authorities.
Stench of death especially strong around the convention center in the Superdome, where people have moved into the open air as they try to get away from it.
These troops know how to shoot and kill, and they are more than willing to do so if necessary, and I expect they will.
My name is Olan Hulion and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are talking about Hurricane Katrina and the government's irresponsible response to the storm. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when I post a brand new video. And if you haven't subscribed to my vlog channel, please do so. Disclaimer, I found all of this from public resources. Please do your own research. Commentary or opinions by me are my own opinions and commentary. This is for entertainment purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. So before we start talking about Hurricane Katrina and where it was identified, we're going to talk about the setup of the government. Our government is unique in the way of a disaster. The local government is to take care of it, and if they get overwhelmed, they ask the state to come in and help them. And if the state can't help, then they call in federal to help. Okay, so it's like dominoes, not dominoes, it's like chess. You have to move this piece in order to move this piece. You know, you get the drill. It's all bureaucracy at its finest. This plays a huge role in the devastation of Hurricane Katrina, but not only Katrina, but the government and its lack of following directions. Okay, so let me lay down the dominoes here, or the chess pieces, if you will. You have New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin, I think it's his name, Ray Nagin. You have the government of Louisiana at the time, which her name was Kathleen Blanco. And then you have president, which is George W. Bush, okay? We have the people. We have Ray Nagin, we have Kathleen Blanco, and then you have President George W. Bush. Hurricane Katrina is identified on August 23rd when it's a tropical depression off the coast of the Bahamas, okay? the federal government starts to monitor it. They're like, hello, we see you out there in the ocean, let me look at you. On August 24th, the storm grows into a tropical depression and it is named Katrina. Later that day, the governor of Florida, which his name is Jeb Bush, declared a state of emergency before the storm even hit, okay? So like the storm is out in the ocean, it's a couple hours away from Florida. He's like state of emergency. Schools and businesses start to close, airports close down, cruise ships alter their routes because they can't port in Miami or the Keys or any of that, so they get altered. Emergency shelters are set up, evacuation mandates are put out, emergency shelters are prepped in preparation for the storm. So as you see here, within just a couple of hours, Jeb Bush is doing the exact thing you should do to prepare for a hurricane. This is what you do during a hurricane. This is what you do. So he only had about 24 hours to prepare for the storm to hit, while Louisiana had about 5 days to prepare. Let me say that again. They had 5 days to prepare for the storm. So on the 25th, FEMA gets involved and they dispatch food and water and resources like that across Florida and into the other states. The evening of August 25th, Hurricane Katrina makes landfall as a Category 1, killing 14 people. This will be rookie numbers by the time the storm is said and done. She makes her way into the Gulf of Mexico, and as soon as she hit that warm water, she explodes into a Category 3, shortly after propelling her to a 4 and even a 5, okay? So she's out here in the storm, she's soaking up all that warm water, and she is literally intensifying. She's becoming this big ass storm. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama are like, oh shit, we see you coming, girl. We see you coming. So a year or two before Katrina even hit, the government did a simulation on what would happen if a Category 5 hit New Orleans. The simulation was named Hurricane Pam. The city and government knew that there was a possibility that the levees would be overtopped, and they needed to make a plan on what to do if that happened. When the storm reached a Category 3, President George W. Bush declared a state of emergency across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. So later on, when they launched an investigation on what happened with Katrina and how all of these things just was a massive failure, they realized, like during the investigation, they found that Mississippi prepared for the storm extremely well. However, Louisiana did not. And Louisiana's preparation was a complete failure. I love my state. August 27th, National Guard was being deployed across southeast Louisiana. Look at the hurricane map of Hurricane Katrina. Let me see if you can throw it up here. It's predicted to go next to New Orleans. So it's never supposed to hit New Orleans. It goes from, it hits southeast Louisiana, you know, the little boot part, and then it gets thrown into Mississippi. It doesn't ever really hit Katrina. New Orleans. So some parishes below New Orleans start to evacuate. So the problem is they sent out recommended evacuation. So it's basically like, hey, we recommend you to evacuate. It wasn't a mandatory evacuation, and that wasn't upgraded until later on. And communication between like the people and the government kind of got, the water got muddied, if you will. They're like, we're not supposed to, like, it's just recommended for us to evacuate. And someone's like, no, it's mandatory. And they're like, what are you talking about? Isn't it mandatory for us to evacuate? It was miscommunication going on like that. And the reason the state started to evacuate from the bottom to the top is that they didn't want a bottleneck to happen. So they didn't want like everybody to like do that. They just kind of wanted it to slowly fall out. Like, you know, back in elementary school, whenever you were evacuating the school bus, they would say they would start from the back and everyone else would leave that way, or they would start from the front and you would just follow out as people are leaving, right? Kind of like that. So you know the simulation of Hurricane Pam that I just mentioned? So during the simulation, it was predicted that it would take around 72 hours to evacuate New Orleans. A normal person would give out the orders to evacuate the city 72 hours or more. Well, Ray Nagin, the idiot that he is, didn't give out the orders to evacuate the city until 24 hours before the storm hit. And it's literally on simulation Pam said you got 72 hours to evacuate for it to be a successful evacuation. Let me remind you, they had 5 days to prepare for the storm. And you didn't send out recommended evacuations for your, well, mandatory evacuations for your city until the day before the storm hit?
I am this morning declaring that we will be doing a mandatory evacuation. Every person is hereby ordered to immediately evacuate the city of New Orleans, or if no other alternative is available, to immediately move to one of the facilities within the city that will be designated as a refuge of last resort. That this is very serious and it's of the highest nature, and that's why we're taking this unprecedented move. The storm is now a Cat 5, a Category 5, as I appreciate it, with sustained winds of 150 miles an hour, with wind gusts of 190 miles per hour. The storm surge most likely will topple our levee system.
Make my blood boil. While Nagin waited last minute to evacuate residents, the Department of Transportation and the state police did what's called a counterflow, and it's the first time that this was ever done in history. Also, side note, one of the main reasons the interstates even exist till this day in the United States is because during the Cold War, America was scared that one of their cities would get obliterated, and the amount of time that it would cause to evacuate a city back then was way longer, and they were like, an effective way to evacuate a city is if we just had interstates like what we have today. You just send them all one direction out. So during war times, if the city was about to get nuked, it was an efficient way to evacuate people, send them out. But during peacetime, it was a good way for the economies to be boosted, travel to be boosted, areas to boom. Like, just look at the maps of cities before the interstates were put in versus after. Yeah, a lot of towns went. The interstate killed a lot of towns, but it also brought prosperity to a lot of other cities. But during the time that they need to evacuate the cities, you could turn both lanes into the evacuation plan. Or the interstate could be used as military operations. And if you ever notice, whenever you're on the interstate for like miles, it'd just be straight and even. That's in the case if they need runways to like take off planes and landing planes. The more you know. So back to the counterflow. This is the act of turning both lanes into one direction in the event of an emergency to evacuate a city. And it's the best efficient way.
Right now, waiting for the arrival of Governor Kathleen Blanco to give the public a briefing about perhaps contraflow, evacuations, whether they be mandatory.
I looked at the interstate situation, and it is fine until you get into this region where there are so many people living, and then it's slowing down a little bit. Later on this afternoon, we will be preparing and watching this traffic to make sure that we make the call for a contraflow at the right time.
Right here, you talked about the contraflow plan working. You can really see it firsthand right now. You know, cars in this intersection are usually going the opposite way into town, eastbound, and because of contraflow, they're going westbound right now. And as you can see, it's moving great right now. No problem for cars today, but that's quite different from earlier today. Just after 4 o'clock when contraflow started, you can see some traffic pretty backed up on I-10 as a lot of New Orleanians, you can tell, decided to leave town, to get out of town, and obviously many of them going west. These are shots of going west on I-10, and it was backed up. We're told it was backed up on I-10 for about an hour or so, but really 1 hour after the contraflow plan went into effect, traffic started easing off. And
contraflow seems to be working.
Jefferson Parish President Aaron Broussard, we're standing by there at our...
So 1.2 million residents followed the evacuation orders and self-evacuated. But The residents of New Orleans relied heavy on public transport and walking. And Nagin knew this. He knew that over 100,000 residents didn't own cars. He made no plans to supply transportation. Out of the city, the state, local government offered to send school buses to evacuate the city, and he turned them down. The state of Louisiana and New Orleans ended up giving him the nickname School Bus Nagin because of this. And his response to the offer was, quoted here,
I need 500 buses, man. We're talking about, you know, one of the briefings we had, they were talking about getting, you know, public school bus drivers to come down here and bus people out here. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This is a national disaster. Get every doggone Greyhound bus line in the country and get their asses moving to New Orleans. That's they thinking small, man, and this is a major, major, major deal.
Well, this isn't a time of emergency and you have no right to be picky. Just saying. Your people are literally going to die, and they did under his watch. But guess what? Guess what? The Greyhound buses never came, and the school buses that actually went down there to, like, you know, we'll just do it ourselves, basically. They got caught in floodwaters. So New Orleans didn't get those school buses. I remember as a kid thinking that, I was like, oh, they sent school buses down to New Orleans to help the people. Yeah, school buses did go down to South Louisiana to evacuate people, but they never stepped foot in New Orleans because he declined the offer. And y'all, this isn't the only offer he declined. But before I discuss that, 150,000 people weren't able to evacuate. Like 150,000 people. And his plan was like, send them to the dome. But apparently in the federal mandate book, it literally states use school buses to evacuate people who can't self-evacuate. Did you hear that, Nagin? Use school buses. Oh, and this was in the mandatory book before they redid it. So this was in there before 2005. It wasn't something they just added recently. Yeah. So, like I said, there were school buses used around, but not like around the city, but not in the city. You get what I'm saying? Like in the surrounding area. But with that came issues of not enough school bus drivers. And the governor, Kathleen Blanca, would not sign a waiver saying that if you had a driver's license, you could be a school bus driver. She would not sign it. No. So their school bus shortage could have been, you know, fixed if she would have just signed a piece of paper. But no, she refused to sign it. She didn't sign it. So people that could have been evacuated by school buses just weren't because she wouldn't sign a piece of paper. The school bus offer wasn't the only offer Nagin turned down. No. So a rail company called Amtrak, I'm pretty sure you've heard of them. If you haven't, they're a railroad company. Okay. So they were getting all of their equipment out of New Orleans. Like any smart business, if you have equipment or whatever in a place that's about to be hit with a hurricane, you move it away, okay? Smart. Who thought of that? So while Amtrak was moving all their assets out of New Orleans, they offered, hey, we have several hundred seats open. Do you want to put evacuees on this train? And the city declined it. Free transportation out of the city? And he knew his residents were sitting ducks. Like, he could have at least sent 300 passengers out. Like, you could have filled it up. Like, what was... But, like, anyways, I don't know about you, but if it were my people, the school buses would have been coming. The train would have been filled. They would have been sent out. So we're getting my people out of here. Like, and also, from a political standpoint here, okay? If you're trying to be re-elected, and I don't know, this might have been his second time in office. Maybe there isn't re-elections. I don't know what the case is here, but he could have literally used this as like, look how good I treated Hurricane Katrina and got reelected. Hell, I don't know if he did get reelected, but I wouldn't have reelected him after this chaos that he caused. Hell no. So the city's backup plan for the residents that didn't have cars was the Superdome. I briefly mentioned that. It was the Superdome. The Superdome could withstand high winds and floodwaters in the case of a disaster. So, the first evening, 9,000 people showed up to the Superdome, and lines wrapped around the block.
This morning, the Superdome is already open for people with special needs. If you have a medical condition, if you're on dialysis or some other condition, we want you to expeditiously move to the Superdome. At noon today, the Superdome will then be opened up as a refuge of last resort.
Jeff Goldblatt has been standing by, checking the situation out, talking to people there over the last several hours, and he joins us now with an update. Jeff?
Hi, Greg. We're starting to see steady rain here at the Superdome. Many of these people have been waiting outside 2 hours, 3 hours, just to get inside the Superdome, a place called a place of last resort for those trying to flee from Hurricane Katrina. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful, you know. It's a long wait, but it's all great, you know what I'm saying?
So as Katrina was making her way towards southeast Louisiana and Mississippi, the storm went from a Category 5 to a Category 3, like she weakened on her way there. Thank God. On August 29th at 6:10 a.m., Hurricane Katrina makes landfall as a Category 3 hitting southeast Louisiana, missing New Orleans. You might be like, Olan, you're telling me Hurricane Katrina didn't hit New Orleans? That's exactly what I'm saying. And don't be alarmed, because I thought the same thing. When I was doing research on this, I thought for years, I thought Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. No. No. Which is funny, it's like whenever you think of Hurricane Katrina, you automatically think New Orleans and the devastation that it caused in New Orleans. But the devastation that caused was pretty much by the government's fault. Because it would have happened if they just did the right things. So when Hurricane Katrina hit, it hit with 103 miles per hour winds, causing trees to collapse and horrific damages to buildings. But the major impact was from storm surges. In Mississippi, the surge went over 20 feet, and in some areas, it reached 27 feet. And most of the damage that Hurricane Katrina actually did cause is to Mississippi. Hurricane Katrina's damage, you know, the storm itself, okay, the damage is Mississippi. Like, she demolished Mississippi.
Ask what would New Orleans do if it gets hit by the big one? It still doesn't know. For 40 years, New Orleans has missed it, and this time New Orleans missed it again. Not entirely, but this is the French Quarter. This is Bourbon Street. In the middle of the French Quarter, Jane, we are in pretty good shape. And for people who live here or abandon restaurants here, to get out of town on all the warnings, emergency managers say you did exactly the right thing.
And this caused major flooding, and 80% of New Orleans was underwater from this. So they say, but that's another video. The water was overtopping the levees, causing the levees to break, which in return sent water straight into New Orleans. But some people think that the levees were bombed. Poof. The leading cause of death was drowning.
Now on the west bank of New Orleans, the west bank and the levee system there, which keeps the water out of the city, a number of the pumping stations are down and have been, and the drainage canals have overflowed and are flooding into neighborhoods, especially in the town of Kenner. They originally thought that the levee had broken and that they had enormous problems there, and as it turns out, that wasn't the case at all. The levees have held, but the West Bank still has some pretty severe flooding.
So a lot of people died in their homes going from one floor to the other, eventually ending up in their attics, and some people use axes to escape to the roof, and some people drowned in their attic. When they were going through, and they discovered a lot of the bodies were actually found in their attics. So sad. Sidebar, do y'all remember the series I Survived? I remember like in elementary school at the book fair, they would always sell the books like I survived 9/11, I survived Hurricane Katrina, I survived, I think there was one about Titanic. I think those are the only 3 books I ever bought, like out of the I Survived series, of course. But I remember in the Hurricane Katrina book, the grandfather or father in there was talking about how they had an axe in their attic just in case another hurricane, like Hurricane Betsy, hit again. And that's a video in itself, Hurricane Betsy. But yeah, a lot of people did sadly die in their attics. And some people did have axes in their attics just in case for an event like this. And some just grabbed it as the water was going up. And they made their ways onto their roofs. Some people went to overpasses. Some people made signs and were holding them up for help. Some people that were in boats that were trying to make their way through to, you know, rescue people or to even leave the area. They were having to push with like sticks and stuff. Ugh. The death toll of Hurricane Katrina was 1,863 deaths, and there were people that went missing and were never found even to this day, 20 years later. And then there was people that were discovered slowly after years after the storm, like 2008, 2010, 2015. People that went missing during the storm are slowly being discovered. There isn't an exact amount of people that are still missing because records were misplaced, destroyed, or were lost during the floods, or people didn't document things correctly. So there isn't an exact number of people that are still missing, which you would think there is no way that many people died in the highly sophisticated states of America with billions of dollars at its disposal. Like, what are you saying? They could have spent money to prevent this from even happening. They should have built the levees right in the first damn place, if that is the cause, overtopping of the levees. And you might say, Olan, all of this was planned. And if you look at it that way, it's shitty. And if you look at it the way that they're making it look like, it's still shitty. Anyways, in 1965, 40 years before Hurricane Katrina even hit, Congress authorized the Flood Control Act, which is commissioned through the Army Corps to build levees to protect Louisiana from any major flooding at the cost of $738 million. This project wasn't due to be completed until 2015. Which is weird. How does it take 50 years to build a levee? So the federal agency that overtook the building of the levees is the Army Corps, and they cut areas to save money, building the levees on weak sand instead of hard clay. Certain areas of the levees had incorrect piling at 10 feet whenever it was supposed to be 17 feet. These parts of the levees collapsed and water rushed into the city, doubling the amount of water that entered the city from the overtopping of the levee. Some people accused the government for intentionally breaking the levees with dynamite or overall bombing, with people saying they heard bombs going off. And if you would like a deep dive on the bombing of the levees, let me know in the comments. I will do that video. But the reason people claim that the levees were bombed is because to prevent water from ending up in rich neighborhoods and the French Quarter, and you put the water in poor neighborhoods to save the rich. However, the American government did an investigation finding that there was no findings of bombs going off, and the bombings of the levees were just a hoax, and that the levees fell due to engineering flaws and for the Army Corps for cutting corners. There were a total of 53 levees that were breached, but the government is the one doing the investigation. The government is the one being accused of doing it. The government is going to be like, yeah, we found that the government, which we are the government, but we found that the government did bomb the levees. See how that makes any sense to you? They're not just going to say, hey, we did it. But you're also wondering, like, Olan, why would the government bomb the levees? That's such an evil act. Like, why would they do that? They did it before. Yep, they did it before. That's another video. But 1927, I think it was, and 1967. Yep. bombed them. At the Superdome, conditions were terrible.
Superdome, home to 9,000 storm refugees, chunks of the metal roof have been blown away. The stench of death especially strong around the convention center in the Superdome, where people have moved into the open air as they try to get away from it and closer to where buses and National Guardsmen can get to them.
We've been out here 4 days. We've really been out here 4 days.
There's 6 bodies upstairs on the 3rd floor. This morning I found one lady in a wheelchair dead.
And the people were told to wait it out and to wait for the federal response to kick in. And the cavalry would arrive within 48 hours. No one came and the levee started to fail. Guess how long it took for the cavalry to arrive? 5 days. It took 5 days. With the floodwaters rushing into the city, more people start to show up at the Superdome, and it's estimated that anywhere from 20 to 30,000 people showed up. Thousands of people were seeking for refuge at the dome. There were little water and no food to go around.
Troops continue their push to secure the massive flood zone and to get the last stragglers out.
This was the scene 5 days ago. People gathering at the Superdome in New Orleans. The elderly, the infirm, and the poor were being helped to safety from an oncoming storm by National Guard troops. Take a look. This is the scene today. Tens of thousands of people massing at the Superdome, hoping to be one of the lucky ones who manages to get out of the disaster zone before succumbing to hunger, thirst, and disease.
Superdome was deplorable. There were a lot of looting going on. Some crimes were committed. The worst thing I saw was the conditions of the bathrooms. It was to the point where the smell was vomiting. The hallways, we actually started camping outside so that we could breathe. There were rumors of rape, murders, and there was a shootout today as well.
The mayor was desperate, okay, to say the least. And he started to exaggerate conditions at the dome. And he is quoted in an interview with Oprah Winfrey.
You're getting ready to see something that I'm not sure you're ready to see. There are people standing out there, have been in that freaking Superdome for 5 days, watching dead bodies, watching hooligans killing people.
And apparently these claims were false, and it didn't attract any help. It actually raised tensions and scared away rescuers. With these claims, security became the focus, and with security comes troops. But before we get in that, let me actually see how many people died in the Superdome. I think it's 14 people, but I think that's a little too high. I think it's actually like 8. 6 bodies were found inside the Superdome and 4 outside after Hurricane Katrina. Oh, so I was kind of right. It was 10 altogether. The coroner's office and officials found no evidence to support claims of murders at the site. The victims' deaths were attributed to circumstances other than murder, and officials later determined that much of the reported violence was overblown. 6 bodies were discovered inside the Superdome and 4 more were found outside. Let's see, what were the cause of deaths? 4 were natural causes, 1 was drug overdose, and 1 was suicide. Nobody was murdered, and nobody was raped. Crazy stuff. Reports of rioting and looting were being reported, and with unrest rising, it was slowing down aid, and so the government was requesting more troops, but 40% of Louisiana's troops were deployed to Iraq at the time. Other states were offering troops, but you know, for whatever freaking reason, nobody in the freaking government was accepting help. So Kathleen Blanco wasn't accepting any requests, like any offers of help with troops. So Kathleen Blanco was slow at declaring a state of emergency in Louisiana because she was heavily relying on the federal response, and she didn't declare it until 24 hours later, which was a day after landfall. Like, that's when she declared it, but it takes 24 hours for officials to approve it. This is what I've heard in the grapevine. Later on, I will actually clarify this, but I thought this was funny because I was writing my script as I was doing research. What I hear, I'm not sure if this is fact or not. It is fact. But she was like,
Daddy Bush, I need help.
And he was like, you have to declare a state of an emergency and make an official request. And she was like,
but Daddy, I need help.
And he was like, you have to declare a state of an emergency and make an official request.
But Daddy.
That was literally what she was doing.
Governor Kathleen Blanco sent a letter to President Bush asking him to declare a state of emergency in Louisiana. That was Saturday, August 27th. Her letter did not include a request for military assistance. Governor Blanco's communications director, Bob Mann, said later, "We always assumed that the troops were pre-positioned and ready to roll, but they were not." The governor's office says that hours after the hurricane made landfall on Monday, August 29th, Blanco spoke with President Bush and assumed her request would get the state federal troops.
And she said, "We need your help. We need everything you've got." The governor genuinely felt at that time she had asked for help.
But she did not appeal for federal troops specifically, and her press secretary says she didn't feel she needed to.
You don't tell a dying man you're not going to give him CPR unless he asks.
So she was relying on the federal state of emergency instead of declaring her own local state of an emergency. When Bush declared a state of emergency in Louisiana, New Orleans wasn't included because it wasn't in the initial path of Hurricane Katrina. It was later requested by Blanco, but Bush had to pressure her to even request it so he could declare it as a state of an emergency to send aid. And it didn't go through until a day after of her request. August 29th, hurricane hits. August 30th, she finally puts in a request. Is there August 31st? Or September 1st. August 31st, it finally clears. One day I'm going to do a TV show on Hurricane Katrina.
Already taking advantage of stores that are damaged and abandoned. Looters pack the streets, filling carts to the brim with stuff, some running with their arms full, as you see there. Someone ripped apart an ATM of all things for some quick cash. Some fast hands went through a pharmacy as well. Looters grabbed as many prescriptions from there as they could.
So as people were looting shops and stuff, she put out a statement saying,
"There are hundreds of law enforcement officers being deployed into New Orleans today to restore order. Looting and other lawlessness will not be tolerated." One message for these hoodlums.
These troops are fresh back from Iraq, well-trained, experienced, battle-tested, and under my orders to restore order in the streets. She continues, "They have M16s and they are locked and loaded."
These troops know how to shoot and kill, and they are more than willing to do so if necessary, and I expect they will.
Sidebar, my uncle was one of those troops that were sent down there for help. And he was fresh from Iraq or Afghanistan, whichever one he came from, I don't remember. My grandfather was also sent down there. He was a deputy chief, I think, at the time of... He was a fireman. The New Orleans police superintendent also attempted to defuse tensions and ordered police soldiers and marshals to confiscate all firearms from civilians, announcing, "No one will be able to be armed. Guns will be taken. Only law enforcement will be allowed to have guns."
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
The city they nicknamed the Big Easy, still a disaster zone under martial law.
Tonight, in a rare move, practically unheard of in the United States, martial law declared.
Would you request martial law? I've already called for martial law in the city of New Orleans.
In fact, martial law was never declared in New Orleans.
I heard rumors that martial law was in place, and then I heard rumors that no, it was not given.
They said they did not pass the order on. However, at one station, a police officer's home videotape captured 1st District Captain James Scott telling officers, quote, "We have authority by martial law to shoot looters."
So citizens scared of rioters and looters were not excited about handing over their weapons without a warrant, which, hello. They're trying to protect themselves from being looted. And my grandfather, he said that whenever they were there to help people, that some people were even shooting at them. So this makes, like, within the context of this, I used to be like, oh my god, that's crazy. But within the context of this, that makes perfect sense why they were shooting at him. In many cases, the guns were taken by excessive force, and there was a report from a 58-year-old lady. Her name was Patricia Coney, and she had a group of police officers enter her home and tackled her to get her revolver And she fractured her shoulder during this.
Well, I don't want you in here.
We're not going to do that.
I don't want you in here, period.
But there's a mandatory evacuation.
I know all about it.
Well, Patricia Coney's protests were to no avail. They moved her out of there, and she is now out of the city.
It was a human drama with emotions and tensions running high. Patty Coney is still trying to recover physically and emotionally.
They really did a number on me.
From the day police forced her from her home.
It was traumatic. All of a sudden, they were banging on the front door, the side door, and the back door. And they said, let us in.
Patty tried to explain. She was on dry land, she had plenty of food and water, and didn't want to abandon her dogs. But it didn't matter.
If you see 6 or 8 police that look like linebackers pushing you in a corner, you're in shock. I'm saying, look at all my food. I got plenty of food. They kept pushing me back, and ended up like this.
Then, Patty showed them a small revolver she was carefully holding in the palm of her hand. A camera crew was there to capture what unfolded next.
I said, it's not even loaded. And I dropped it on the floor.
You got a gun?
Well, they punched me in the face. Look at my black and blue marks. Look at what they did to me. They dragged me out of here. I really thought they were going to kill me. I really did.
Like, why are you taking weapons away from people that are looting and making things worse? Why are you taking a handgun? Okay, this isn't like an AK or an AR. Like, this is a handgun. Why are you taking it away from a civilian in their home minding their own business? It's not like they got AK-47s pointing in at people, AR-15s pointing at people. What's another semi-automatic, automatic weapon? Like, they're not pointing that at people, you know what I mean? Crazy. Normally, FEMA would have been in charge of this situation. That's why in a lot of photos, you'll see signs that say, FEMA, where are you? Or people holding up signs like, FEMA, please help. Or FEMA, where are you? Is like the most common one. So after 9/11, DHS, also known as Department of Homeland Security, was made. It was put in place. It was set up. FEMA's budget was cut and funds were moved to Department of Homeland Security, and DHS was in charge of national security and disasters. But due to 9/11, their focus was on terrorism. A hurricane was on the bottom of their list of things to worry about. Apparently, DHS had no plan for a hurricane if it occurred. Like I said, there was no plan for storms because, you know, out of sight, out of mind. That's the way they were treating that. So it took a week for federal law enforcement to even arrive to Katrina, well, to New Orleans. And whenever they got there, they were distracted by turf wars with officers from the Department of Justice, and neither department could agree on who should take the lead. And no effort was made to activate the National Disaster Medical System, and only one team was available for immediate medical assistance after the storm. Homeland Security was being criticized for failing behind, and it wasn't until 36 hours after that they declared an incident of national significance. On Thursday, September 2nd, 4 days after landfall, and when the conditions at the Superdome were at the worst, Michael Chertoff, the head of Homeland Security, made a statement.
The fact of the matter is the Superdome is secure. Everybody is confident of the ability to maintain order.
He admitted later on that he had no knowledge that the situation was as bad as it actually was, and he said it caught him by surprise. Chertoff blamed his ignorance and insufficient communications from his men on the ground on FEMA Director Michael Brown. Michael also claimed that he didn't know that there were evacuees in the Superdome till Wednesday. Yeah. So, Hurricane hits Monday. Tuesday. He didn't know until 2 days later. It's a joke, honestly. So a CNN reporter stated, "How is it possible that we are getting better information than you while we are showing live pictures of people outside the convention center?" His response was, "Well, we're busy doing life-saving efforts. We rely upon the state to give us that information." So on paper, this looks great. FEMA flew 2,000 firefighters into Atlanta. And while they were there, they were watching videos on sexual harassment and the history of FEMA for 4 days. Don't you think there's better things that need to be done? And why are they flying into Atlanta? Why not Baton Rouge and then dispatched out to New Orleans? Like, people are literally dying. But FEMA claims that they called them in for community relations work. And there was no hurry to get them on the ground, although FEMA deployed supplies before the storm hit. The shipment was for their usual hurricane response, and in this case, Katrina wasn't the usual hurricane. Food and water ran out fast, and on top of that, some of the aid was delivered to the wrong places. Alabama received 5 times the amount of water that Louisiana received. They worked quickly to set up temporary homes, which was 95,000 mobile homes, aka FEMA trailers. Pretty sure if you know anything about Katrina, you've seen these before, right? Which this cost around $1.3 billion. You know, you could have just spent $1.3 billion on levees that actually didn't sink or had engineer flaws. I mean, you end up spending that money anyways. But some of the FEMA trailers were left unused because they were placed on floodplains. And some poisoned others for extensive carcinogenic formaldehyde. Only 17% of the trailers were ended up being used. So taking the total cost of family that was housed to $125,000 to $200,000. You know, they could have just bought a new home at that point. FEMA instructed emergency services from outside of the areas to not respond to calls for help without being lawfully requested by local and state authorities. FEMA seemed like they didn't want to work with charity organizations and failed to accept or request aid. The Red Cross requested 300,000 meals for September 1st, and FEMA canceled the order and then reordered for final delivery on October the 8th. 5 whole weeks later, they even spent time removing hospital ID bracelets from evacuating patients and replacing them with IDs that led the hospitals to lose track of their patients. 3 months after Hurricane Katrina, a hospital CEO admitted that they still could not locate some of their patients. Turned away truckloads of water and prevented the Coast Guard from delivering fuel. There was an offer for 50 civilian aircraft and fleet of Greyhound buses to help evacuate the Superdome, and they turned it down as well. Germany had a charter plane filled with aid and ready to leave for 9 days, and their offer was ignored. There were people rescued and taken to overpasses where they were forgotten, and some even died. FEMA blamed down communications such as phones, radio, and internet, and it took them 6 days to give out satellite phones to their employees. But the Bush administration did budget cuts and dismantled the organization by bringing in DHS and spreading funds between the two. So the simulation Hurricane Pam showed gaps in the hurricane relief, and with this knowledge, they still failed to prepare. During the time that alerts came out about Hurricane Katrina, Bush was on his 5-week vacation at his home in Texas. He was on the 4th week, and a day later after Hurricane Katrina hit, he made his way to Washington, D.C., but on his way there, he flew over to see the destruction of Hurricane Katrina. He flew over New Orleans. He toured the city to look at the devastation, and he literally rolled up his sleeves to look like he was actually doing something. What are you doing? What are you doing, Mr. President? At Memorial Hospital, 45 patients due to heat, or that's what it was classified under. But there was a whole investigation that the doctor euthanized her patients because there was no way to evacuate them, and help didn't come until a week later. President Bush put out a statement on September 13th saying,
Katrina exposed serious problems in our response capability at all levels of government. And to the extent that the federal government didn't fully do its job right, I take responsibility.
And with that statement, why are you taking responsibility for all this? Like, I get, like, the federal response absolutely sucked, but we had Nagin over here not evacuating people with buses like he should have, and then he let an Amtrak go empty, okay? And then we have Kathleen Blanco not authorizing a waiver for people with driver's license to drive the school buses, and then the freaking Bush administration had to literally bully her into declaring a state of emergency on her own state. Like, come on. Why is he taking full responsibility of this? Like, his kids should have done better. That's literally what it sounds like. It's like he's a dad taking the responsibility, like taking the blame for his kids' actions. That's what it feels like. And I get he was responsible due to the funding being cut to FEMA and DHS being established and the levees not being fully built at the time, and the ones that were built had engineering flaws. Like, I get all of that, but like, there was things that you could have prevented from people from dying, and the people that were charged of those situations failed too. Like, everybody failed. So my grandfather, I think I mentioned this loosely, my grandfather and uncle would sit down during Hurricane Katrina, and I remember my mom getting a call. Well, I don't remember my mom getting a call. She always tells me she got a call. I don't remember this. I just remember watching the news and being like gobsmacked of what the hell was happening. I was like 4 or 5 years old. My mom was big and pregnant. I was watching the news with all the people on the roofs or whatever, and the city being underwater, and I was so like I'd never seen that before. I was a kid. My mom got a call from the chief at the fire department asking if she heard from her daddy. Mind you, she's big and pregnant, okay? She's about to have her kid like in less than a month. She's like 2 weeks out from delivery. She gets a call saying that her dad is missing, basically. And she freaks out. And she's like, what do you mean? No, I haven't heard from my daddy. Like, isn't he with you? Thank God he was found. He was found helping somebody, but yeah. And then my grandfather said that whenever they were trying to help people, that some people were shooting at them. I mentioned that, which makes sense with the context of what was laid out in New Orleans and the confiscation of guns. And then, yeah, should I interview my grandfather and ask him about Hurricane Katrina since he was down there helping? I feel like that would be something, well, even if it was just for me, like he's getting old, he has dementia, I feel like that would be interesting to keep, to hold on to my grandfather's story like that. I just want to sit down one day and just hear my grandfather and my grandmother just speak about their life. Editing Olan here, I have some things to clear up real quick. So the Superdome didn't start being evacuated until August 31st, and the people that they were evacuating were people in medical need. And within this evacuation order, they also asked people to start sending down buses for help.
Buses are being loaded to move them to the Astrodome in Houston.
I've asked the president to give us all the resource possible today. We need his help today, and I believe help is on the way.
As the days followed, more buses showed up to the Superdome, and they were eventually able to complete the evacuation of the Superdome on September 4th. Although there's many rumors on what happened within the Superdome, many still believe that the rumors were true, and honestly, I kind of do too, because as I've been editing this video and doing more research, because it feels like the more I edit this video, the more I find. Like, I thought I did enough research in the first place, but I guess not. I'm finding videos and stuff that has been cleaned off the internet. I've gone through archives of news footage, and I can't find anything. One of the things I wasn't able to find is like Kathleen Blanco during her speech about guns are locked and loaded, and the Iraq statement that she made about the troops coming down. And then I can't find the interview with CNN with Michael Brown and the reporter asking, how are we getting more information than you? Can't find that at all. The Oprah Winfrey footage of Nagin saying that people were being murdered and stuff in the Superdome, it literally took me forever to find that. Most of the footage that I was able to find, or the clips I was able to find, is literally from documentaries from 2006 and 2007. Anything from now on, I can't find whatsoever. Okay, another thing I forgot to mention is as the levees broke, the city started flooding, and as the city started flooding, the sewer system started to take on that water. As soon as the sewer system was overwhelmed and the pumps that were used to pump the water out of the city into Lake Pontchartrain and out into the ocean start to backlog and fill up, sewer caps slowly start to pop off in the city, causing the city to flood even more. That's why it flooded worse than it did in the first place. It's because not only did the levees break, but the sewer system literally started to pour out into the city. If you see like these clips I'm about to show you, there's like 3 portholes of like water flowing out of it. It literally looks like a fountain.
From the sea, today many of these pumps are waterlogged and inoperable. Once the pumps are reactivated, they can finish the process of draining. That could take weeks or months. Then the process of rebuilding begins. That could take years. Jeffrey Kaufman, ABC.
Oh, but there were some comments that I found because when I was doing research, I weren't just looking at articles and stuff from that time, which I found a lot. And y'all, I was going down forums and all kinds of things that were like established before I was even born. I'm born in 2001, but before I was even born, and some of the forums that were established about Hurricane Katrina in 2005 and people talking about it, it's crazy because it literally looks like a MySpace page low-key. Like, it looked so outdated, but they were saying stuff and some of their comments and stuff was like fascinating. But I watched like ton of documentaries. I was watching some documentaries on YouTube as well. And some of these comments were saying things like this, like, let me read them later. So this woman said, her name was Nicole. She said, when Katrina hit, I was working in a pediatric ER in Florida. In every room, the Weather Channel had New Orleans on the screen. I didn't know it at the time, but our flight team flew out and we got an alert of an incoming mom who gave birth in a tree in New Orleans during the hurricane. We got her, the room was so quiet, hearing her talk about what she saw broke all of us. She gave what the news said in a different view. It was terrible. Luckily, the mom and baby made it. Praise the Lord. This girl is named Brittany. She said, Katrina stole my senior year of high school. I survived the Superdome. I was there for a week. I have been back home since 2011, and the Superdome is my part-time job since 2011. I still have PTSD when it rains hard and sometimes right before I start my shift in the dome. I hate it being called a refugee. We are survivors. We are resilient. And those were just some that like kind of stuck with me whenever I was reading some of the comments. Because people living Hurricane Katrina and being there in New Orleans is going to tell you a completely different story than some of these documentaries can even give us. With all the research I did, I could do at least 5 videos on Hurricane Katrina itself. This was pretty much just like an overview of what happened on Hurricane Katrina, but if you would like a deep dive, let me know. I could do one on the levee breaking and the conspiracy that surrounds that. I could do one on the Superdome and what happened there. I could do one on Memorial Hospital and how the doctor euthanized her patients, killing 45 people because of the forced evacuation and no way to evacuate her patients. I could do one on Mississippi and how the real damage from Hurricane Katrina was actually on Mississippi. How a prison was abandoned and some of the inmates are still labeled as missing or MIA. Whenever we both know they died in that prison, the prison just doesn't want to take full responsibility for that. And I'm pretty sure going down that rabbit hole, I could find other things to talk about. Like last night, I went to sleep watching a documentary about Charity Hospital and what happened there. Like, there's just so, like, once you open this can of worms, it just more and more information you just start finding, and you're just like, what the actual went wrong? Like, what hello? That's it for today's video. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever I post a brand new video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my vlog channel. I do vlogs over there. I do makeup, some makeup content. I do whatever you ask of me over there. And I will see you next week. Maybe.
In New Orleans, come on, let's go for cover. Along with photographer Kevin Martels, we're gonna go inside now.